the Spirit Sessions podcast. I'm your guide, Katie Silcox, bringing you your weekly self-love soundbite. Join us, where I'll help you find your true spiritual home, where every single aspect of you is holy ground, holy ground, holy ground, holy ground.
This is a Spirit Session podcast with Katie Silcox, Venga Chicos, empezamos.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hi everyone, Katie here. This podcast is intended to inspire you, educate you, and most importantly, support you on your journey towards knowing who you really are, that inner self, that inner teacher. I am not a psychologist or a medical doctor and do not offer professional health or medical advice on this podcast. If you are suffering from any kind of psychological or medical issue, please do the right thing and seek help from your qualified health professional. All right, everyone. Here we are yet again. The two Kates of Ayurveda have come together to talk about all things holy, taboo, primal. And there was one more word, Kate. What was it?
Sacred.
Sacred. Kate and I both have a book out, and so we decided to come on each other's podcasts and just do what we like to do, which is have hopefully good and deep discussions. Hello. My dog is going to be a part of this podcast. She has been very naughty this week, and she's also amazing. And just talk about, I think, our projects that we've been into and what we're kind of passionate about. And I think both of us probably with an ounce or two of curiosity at how our journeys have unfolded in terms of this thing called Ayurveda, which is so much bigger than just what we might think. Does that sound right, Kate?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. So Primal Living, my book, I told Kate, had an original title that Kate, I don't think you're going to mind me saying this. She was like, oh, that was a much better title. Those of you that know and love Kate know that she has a wonderful bluntness, and I loved it. And the original title of my book was actually Holy. And I talk about that all the time. Like every interview I've had, I tell the person the book's actually called Holy, even though I love Glowworthy, and that the word holy was so contentious. There was so much resistance to using the word holy, both from the place of, we don't want anyone to think this is a Christian book. And then from the other side of it, that we don't want to upset the yoga girls who want a book about Tantra. And we also don't want to piss off the Christians who are going to think this is a book about Christianity and open it up and be like, what is this witchery? So I'm curious about your book, Primal. Originally, I think it was called Uninflamed, or is that the official title now?
Yeah. So this was interesting. I did a ton of polling within my community, and we were at Wild Habits for a long time. And that would have been a really good book title, Wild Habits. And then I was talking with a marketer, and he was like, make it speak to the end result. So we went to Uninflamed, which is the worst book title ever.
That's so funny, because I have the book and I'm scared to open it yet.
Which one? Primal Habits or Uninflamed? Which
Uninflamed.
One? Okay.
And yeah. I think that's a brilliant title.
Okay. So then what happened next? Is Uninflamed was written for someone who might be pretty mainstream and suffering from chronic inflammation. So it's written for that person, which is a different audience for me, because I've written mostly to the yogic and Ayurvedic community. And this was there's not going to be Sanskrit. Like if there's Sanskrit, it's going to be in parentheses in the back. Look it up there if you want to find more, but very much broken down. So the book was, the reason I wrote On Inflamed was I was trying to do all that, like really trying to find where it started from was like, why does urine therapy work and why does it show up everywhere? And that brought me into a much, much bigger project on chronic inflammation and understanding chronic disease, and then understanding the habits that we had before our habits were conventional, the habits that we had before Ayurveda, the habits that we had before Chinese medicine, the habits that we had when we were primal. So that what then happened is I published this massive book. On Inflame's a freaking monster. And for anyone who has Kindle Unlimited, it's free. If not, like the way Jeff Bezos runs Amazon is it's $3 because I can't give it to you free. Otherwise I would, because I just want everyone to have the guide for how do you reverse chronic inflammation with the habits. Then what I did is, because it was such a monster of a book to explain all the science for how all the habits work. And people say they want science, but they really don't. No one has any time to read it. They really want to know what works, but they think they want it science-backed. So if you want it science-backed, read On Inflamed. All I did then was take out all the primal habits. And I cut the book size down 50% or almost that, and published it under another name, Primal Habits, because I own all my stuff now. And so then I was able just to release it as Primal Habits. Now what happened with Primal Habits is people can remember it. The yogis like it, right? Like the biohackers, they're like, oh, Primal Habits. Yeah, what's that? Tell me more.
The whole deeper conversation subtext of this is like getting people to understand and resonate with what you're putting out there. And it reminds me of learning how to make things into warm soup so that people can digest it. And I think you and I really share this, in that what I am doing inside my body on a pranayama level has absolutely nothing to do with breathing or touching your nose or pumping your belly. What I am doing and sharing with the emotional realm is working with emotions as goddesses themselves, not from a Hindu perspective, although that's beautiful, but like it is primal emotionality. It predates, I love that you said that, like pranatana, like these things predate what we would consider Ayurveda, yoga, Christianity, Sufism, like whatever the name be it, right? Even Buddhism, like these ancient practices. And a conversation you and I had struck me because you said to me, the fact that I can talk to you about urine therapy shows me your state of consciousness. And in that phrase, A, I felt complimented. That always feels nice. But B, I can only imagine how much resistance that you've had to this, because I remember getting kicked out of a yoga studio in Ohio for talking about the primal nature of the raw embodied emotion of anger. And it was like, get out. Like, yeah, I mean, that's like a longer story I probably don't want to tell, but like, I think there's such a challenge for you and I and those of us that are attempting to share what's worked, hopefully from a place of like bodhisattva consciousness, right? That there's an art to being able to transmit it so it can be digested without sacrificing what it is.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I want to pull up this song right now from Chill Bump, and the lyrics, I just sent it to Amy Ippoliti. We were at Teton Yoga Festival, and it's about the power of anger, and like you got to get the lyrics basically are like, you got to get mad, like you got, like there's a lot to get mad about. There's a lot of fuel in to direct that. What I'm hearing and what we're both saying right now is that when you go primal, there's unity. Like when you go primal, you're now beyond these differentiations of like, oh, you label yourself with that label and I label myself with this label. And these words, you know, maybe I like science, maybe I like Sanskrit, maybe I like Christian iconography and language, right? Like that's all separate. That's all the language of separation. And when we get down to like, what is the human technology, right? What's the technology of the emotions? What's the technology of the physiology? Right, that's where it goes primal, and that's where you actually see all this cross wisdom across the barriers of time and space and culture.
Agree, and it's so exciting and also challenging to be an expander in that way culturally. I love what you said, Kate, this is beyond that. It's actually non-dualism, which is supposedly what this whole deal is about. Going beyond labels, like the original meaning of the word yoga. And I find in myself, I'm not saying I'm above this, but like I've been really working with even what, and like we're speaking on different chakra levels and different states of consciousness, but in the sense of like even going beyond the psychology and into this place where we are no longer running the stories and identifications of being a victim or being full of guilt as a perpetrator. Like, of course, on another level, that might be appropriate for a temporary time, right? Like, I don't mean to take away from like the very real necessity of labels temporarily that can be helpful. But I think moving out of that, especially when we're speaking about something like Ayurveda or yoga, it's super vital because it's the very essence of where the healing comes from. Like healing comes from the recognition of the unity. And one more thing, just going back perhaps to anger, in Tibetan Tantra, it is said that anger without fixation, meaning mental cognitive labeling, is pristine diamond-like wisdom.
Yeah, totally. And that's where it goes to taboo.
Exactly. And so that maybe just to highlight that for our listeners, like, I think there's at least in the circles I've kind of been in, there's this idea like, oh, feel your feelings. And then they become these justifications for these sort of awful recapitulations of old stories and narratives that we're trying to escape under the guise of, well, my feelings are real and valid. And it's like, no. Your story about the feeling may or may not have anything to do with reality.
Yeah.
The primal pulsation of your anger is actually something to learn how to hold and contain and work with internally, like a kundalini, right? Like a bonfire. And for me, I always thought I had such a great, I mean, I am the emotion girl. Like you go to Cate Stillman for all this stuff, right? And I'm like realizing I'm so quick to jump into the cognitive layer because to actually sit in the primal anger, man, that's hard.
And to be in it together, right? Then it's like, to me, there's even another level of tapas or hardness to that.
And intimacy.
And intimacy. Yeah. And the transformational quality of tapas of like, oh, that's that diamond. Diamond cuts, right? It's the hardest stone. It cuts. Like, how do you cut through the malaise? How do you cut through culture, cut through conventionality, cut through the BS, right? There's got to be that laser like directionality of like presence and it's going somewhere. Presence and it's going somewhere. Where is it trying to go?
And witnessing that with curiosity and no agenda.
No agenda. Yeah. I mean, which is why so much now I have to self-publish, because like no one would publish me anymore. I don't think. It's way too primal. It's way too out of the box. It's what I'm writing is way too taboo.
Okay, so let's go there. So for listeners on both of our podcasts, like we're talking about these things as if everyone knows. So I think you and I share this sort of aspect of being slightly renegade, may not be the word, but like just willing to go there. Fine, we'll use it. And touch the taboo, although you and I have such different ways of doing it, but touching the taboo. And so what are some of the areas that you have found that are a part of the primal awakening, reawakening, that are taboo?
The most taboo, there's 3 habits that are the most taboo. So when I say that to you guys listening, you should naturally be disgusted or have a really strong cultural judgment.
Like that's the definition of a taboo.
Yeah, right. It means that the way that you think about it has been conditioned by culture. And the reason it has been conditioned by culture is because it's easier to control you. And this has been going on since the beginning of really, I mean, agriculture is the pivotal shift to humans living in the same place in being able to farm and graze. So we're less hunter-gatherer. We're less like just, seamlessly integrated into the ecosystem. Pre-agriculture, we have 100% microbiome. Post-agriculture, we start to diminish our microbiome. We have loss of microbial diversity.
That's actually the sound
Sorry.
of Kate's amazing gut biome. While you're doing that, Kate, like just one sort of caveat on the taboo, and we're going to get into that, the control and this and this and this. But aren't there some taboos that do serve a function culturally? The incest taboo, for example.
I don't want to get into the research, particularly on incest. I just want to back up to how are you controlled in ways that you don't even know you're controlled for the convenience of those who are becoming more powerful because of being able to manipulate you away from primal instinct. Primal instinct actually goes to diversification of genes. Anyone with I have such a good example of this. My dog, I have an amazing dog, and my dog is a mutt, but her mama was a purebred, looked like Lassie come home kind of Lassie, right? And her next to Lassie's cage was the boy version of Lassie, and they were being mated together to create the next generation of purebred, documented Lassies. But then the neighbor dog dug a fucking hole right under the fence, right? When no one was looking, in the middle of the night, and she's in heat, and bam, he plants the seed. And these dogs are amazing because they're mutts. They're 10 times stronger. They have stronger genetic diversity. Now, this Lassie dog was being mated to both dogs at the same time, essentially. They had no idea when she was pregnant how they would come out, right? And then they were bummed because they couldn't sell them for as much money. But the breeder was like, these are way better dogs than if they were purebreds, And she was like a full-on Russian dog breeder. This one was amazing. And that really speaks to, that's the primal instinct. The primal instinct, like how that other guy smells over there, not the guys you grew up with.
I see. So what are these 3 taboos then?
So the taboos are around feces. So we'll start there. Urine and psychedelics. Those are the 3 that have the most, and the psychedelic one, that's weakening really far and fast. Like the new studies on psilocybin, the microbiome and autism, psilocybin, microbiome and dementia, psilocybin, for those who don't know, mYcobiome, MYCO, that's the fungal microbiome. So it's the microbiome controlled by the fungus. There's research, PTSD, there's research coming out left, right, and center right now because we can finally study these plants again. But those were that plant category was under taboo since 1950 and got, lifted around 2010. Okay, but let's go to feces and urine. So how to use feces and urine as medicine. It's talked about in Ayurveda. It's done in India. It's not done in the United States. So there's already a really strong filter around what was imported. You even say putting cow dung, dried cow dung on your gums to regrow your oral health for anyone who has tooth decay, for anyone who has gum decay, for anyone who has cavities, for anyone who's got any sort of gum disease, or has a cracked tongue, or has scallops on their tongue, or has malabsorption. It's initially usually people react with disgust. So disgust is there's this level of this disgust, a biological emotion or a trained emotion. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look again across cultures, people use dung for everything. Buffalo dung and cow dung, they used it as their fuel. The ancient Vedic custom, if a baby was being born, you'd take cow dung, you'd mix it in water and you'd hose the place down. This is their version of making something sterile. You're not trying to make something sterile. You're trying to up-level the microbiome in the birth environment. So you hose the place down with cow dung juice. You're going to have a ritual 2,000 years ago, Ayurvedic style. You're going to put every implement that's going to be part of the ritual, you're going to wash it in cow dung juice, which is just cow dung mixed with water. So a lot of us already are can be a visceral repulsion right there. That's trained. That's not primal. If babies with urine, babies naturally want to play with their urine. Boys like to shoot it everywhere. There's a natural impulse to pee in the tub. There's a natural impulse to taste your pee. All these natural impulses, these are all instinctuals. Mammals do them. Primates do them. Your dog licks its genitals and tastes its pee all the time. So does your cat. So these are primal. They've been trained out. And that which is trained out is taken away your personal power. the power of your immune system, the power of your microbiome as an organ.
Well, and I'm thinking, there is this new, I'm sure you're aware of this, Kate, but like for listeners, what she's saying is actually emerging in the United States as a field to help people with extreme gut issues. They have people do poop replacement therapy using a blender and an enema and, sometimes orally. So this is now like cutting edge modern science.
Cutting edge.
And then because I had a relative actually do this and she was like wasting away and like gained back all her vitality and her weight that she needed. And she was literally getting poop from her best healthy friend. This reminds me, we're talking about two completely different things, but if we go back to this idea of holy and holism,
yeah.
In tantric medicine, on a spiritual, more sort of pranic level, I'm sure you've heard of this practice of feeding your demons. We take the thing that we feel is the shittiest part of us, literally cow dung in India burned, and then the ash placed on the third eye as a symbol of something that has been initiated into a quote holiness, holism. On a spiritual level, this is the only thing that transmutes things. The more we push away anger, guilt, deny the fact that we all have parts of us that are greedy and manipulative and lustful and fucking egotistical and yes, even narcissistic. We all have a thread of all of these things. We're in a shadow boxing match with our demons rather than consuming them and eating them and then allowing that to turn to nectar. Before everyone run out and begin consuming their fecal matter, Kate, I think it's important to mention that there were also rituals, shamanic initiations, and on a physical level, like you do prepare these things in a certain way, right? Like you talk about this in the book around, especially the urine therapy.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, the gardeners out there they're already mixing cow dung into the soil. And this is the way it works. Anyone who gardens, like I spend quite a bit of time in my greenhouse and my gardens and in the woods harvesting stuff. Is like naturally, it's like you got your hands in the soil and then you pick your nose. You do. You've done it. You've all done it. Or like you rub or scratch something on your skin. Right? You scratch something on your skin, you're like peeling off the first few levels of the epithelial lining, and you're putting cow dung from the soil because you mixed in compost into your soil. You're putting that on your skin. So like we have always done this. Mm-hmm. Now, the further we are from the dirt, there's new studies showing that like all this stress reduction stuff with gardeners. All these things are happening with gardeners. They have stronger microbiomes. They have less stress. They sleep better. They need less caffeine. Like all the things from gardening. I'm not a great gardener either, you guys. Like really, like solid D here. I'm not a master gardener here. I just like to like see what grows. And I'm a big fan of permaculturing my yards. It's like what naturally grows here. What do I weed out? What seeds do I gather and throw in? That's all connection to microbiome. That's all connection to the different plants, animals, pollens, et cetera, that are going in. So the more disconnected someone is from soil, the more loss of microbial diversity. The typical city dweller right now in the globe, pick any major city, is down 30% of microbiome. Now, if your microbiome's an organ, which it is, it's like basically everywhere the outside meets the inside. If you're down 30%, it's like imagine your heart or your lungs or your stomach or your colon down 30% of functionality. So you hit a tipping point where like you can be down 5-10% and have a few symptoms. You're down 30%, you get to systems failure. So that's the easy way in with cow dung. I mean, and I happen to live in, I would say, the holy mecca of cow dung, because the cows where I live get to graze in the national forest. I'm at high altitude, it's snow melt. So they're 100% eating wild plants. And I get their fresh cow dung, I stick it in the dehydrator, dehydrate it, use it as mouth powder.
So right. I'm living out in the country now in Virginia. I moved and we have horses. So do mule and horse dung work?
Yeah, right. So cow, holy shit, right? Holy shit from the sacred cow. So you want to go with cow because of more grass and 4 stomachs. So for those who want to take necessary precautions, what you would do is you would take your cow dung, you'd make it into cow dung juice. So you would you would mix it with water, and then you would strain the fiber out, which is basically just like chewed grass, and then you would boil it.
That's kind of
Boil
like
it for like 10 minutes. Yeah. Because if you're like kind of questioning the health of the cows, you'd boil it. And then with that liquid, you could just let it evaporate, dehydrate it. You could cook it off a bit. And then I just go straight to dehydrated. But I'm crazy, you guys. Like, I am so experimental and outside the box, and I'm not recommending anyone do what I do. I'm just telling you what I do.
We have a really great, please consult your doctor. This is meant to be educational purposes only at the beginning of this podcast. For exactly guests like you, Kate.
Exactly. Yeah. So urine therapy is easier because you're already peeing. Now, what happens with urine therapy, and that's where all the chapters in Primal Habits are. But what I want to speak a little bit more to, I'll talk a little bit about how to do it or how to start. But I want to tell you the results that I've seen, because I've led the Ayurvedic living course for over a decade. I've led Body Thrive based on the daily habits of yogis for over a decade. Now we have Club Thrive. There's a concept in yoga and Ayurveda called svastha, right? Seated in the self. In svadhyaya, which is that dhya, right? Wisdom, to study, to know. Sva is the self. What urine therapy seems to do, and I'll say a bit on how to do it, but what it seems to do faster than any other habit I've ever taught or led or self-practice is it purifies non-self from self. So it returns the operating system to primal. And what that means for an individual to be outside of culture, to be outside of consumer culture, to be outside of conventional habits cannot be understated in this day and age when we are simply being bought and sold. All our data is being bought and sold. We have less control over our mind than ever. And it's having absolutely devastational effects on our offspring, on our aging population, and on each of us listening. So when I talk about urine therapy, and you guys who don't know me, like, this is all I've done for 2 decades, is like what works from Ayurveda and yoga, and that's what brought me into Primal. So the way you start with urine therapy is like when you're peeing, you just rub some pee on the top of one hand, the back of one hand, not the other, consistently for a week. That's it. That's your first test.
Like experiment on your own body.
Yeah. And there's actually a ton of research that shows that holding yourself back from a habit actually builds a lot more momentum from the habit than jumping full in. So if you like really want to rub it all over your body, because some of you will, don't let yourself, like, just hold back.
So do one hand for a week.
Yep. And then you're just noticing, and what'll start to happen, and we have a huge test group, we've just seen this time and again, is like your body, it's an intuitive medicine. All the primal habits are intuitive. So there's no discipline needed. There's no motivation needed in any of the primal habits. It's just it's just the operating system of like, this is what naturally happens. You naturally orient towards thrive. You naturally feast and fast. You naturally sleep deeply. You naturally do these ways of breathing. Like, all these things are just naturally occurring when you're primal. Urine therapy seems to be the cure-all to getting people back to svastha. It changes so much so fast. So the next test is a drop under the tongue.
What happens to the hands, what you've seen? You can see the difference between one and the other?
You feel it. So the body's going to start taking over the mind. The way culture taboos is it teaches you shame and exile. Right? You go against this, you got to go it alone in life. Now, it's impossible to do that. Like, even right now, most of us can't exist without being connected through the internet. But do you think of like even 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, like exile meant death, and your seed doesn't get passed forward. So you're not part of the human chain. You are out. You are just game over. So you are willing to do anything to fit in. Conventionality is trained from the get-go. So you're brought into conventional culture. So there was never a chance to primal. So what happens is you rub it on your skin, and your skin is like more up here, over here, down here, over there. What about in my nose? What about my eyes? What about my ear? What about, like your body? It's an intuitive medicine. Now, the more disgust you have, the more conventional your beliefs are. That just means you had thicker, stronger training. There might be PTSD around it, right? Okay, it's okay. You can go as slow as you want. And you might not be ready for 2 years. No problem. There's no rush. Right? Because like once you know, you're going to start seeing more of it. You're going to hear more people doing it.
So Kate, we've talked about this on the podcast before. So I want to ask a little different direction around it. What if you know for a fact that you're in a hardcore detox moment? Maybe you're detoxing mold. Maybe you're detoxing, maybe you're on birth control for
Cancer cells.
Yeah. Like in that moment, and you know your urine has these high levels of substances, would you say going slower is better?
It's intuitive medicine. So I would say,
Check out a drop.
I would just say, yeah, oh yeah, I would definitely start dropping. If you're detoxing, it's going to accelerate the detox. It's going to accelerate the healing crises. It's going to rebuild the microbiomes faster than anything else. So say the detox is happening, say the healing crisis is happening in your sinuses and your lungs, right? That's like a COVID thing, or chronic allergies, or rhinitis, or mouth breathing, or mouth decay. All of those are linked to those microbiomes. You start snorting, you're probably going to have a healing response. As those systems come back online, they're going to peel off the dysbiotic microbial communities. It's like going from a dead coral reef or a dying coral reef to like those algae blooms, right? If that algae bloom's happening in the sinuses, that's what happens before it dies. That's the dysbiosis. It'll just peel it out and move it out faster.
It's exactly similar to the emotional body in the sense that as you are healing from, we use the word trauma and PTSD, but I think at this point we're speaking about karmic. We all have these sort of karmic overlays. And as they are becoming unfrozen from the psyche and the actual, skin or whatever layer they're held in the physiology, they feel worse.
Yeah.
Feel more. It's like my teacher says it's a cause for celebration.
Yeah. That's exactly it. The healing crisis, exactly it. And culture wants you to consume. Culture just wants your money. That's how. And once you see that, and there's a whole chapter on that in Primal Habits called Money, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just uninflamed. We really get into like the economics behind you as consumer and why so many of these taboos, including how to respond to a healing crisis, or including how to respond to an emotional catharsis. Right? We've been trained to distraction and to get out of the pain fast, to go to numb. Right? With food, with drugs, with shopping, with this, with that, with surgeries, with whatever. It's like go to numb. So this is the opposite, right? It's like it goes to subtle goes to sacred. It's all hidden in the taboo, your emotions, all of it, right? It's like,
yeah, it's the very thing that we are trying so hard to run away from.
Yeah.
The exact spot that holds the healing medicine. Like, I do not want to feel this feeling. Okay, if I can open to really feeling it and actually paradoxically going towards the thing that I've been conditioned my entire life to stay far away from, underneath, behind, within, whatever, there's always this hidden nectar or revelation or energetic release or wisdom behind it. And yet I've been doing this work for 20 years as well, Kate, and I'm still amazed at my capacity to run away from what hurts. It's still so compelling to want to slip off of the primal raw experience.
Yeah. Well, if we're all in a toxic culture going towards numbness and turning us into consumers, then like, of course, because that's being repeated every day. But now we're combining that with AI. Like now we're combining that with an insane amount of customization that's meant to trigger the fuck out of us.
Wow.
So there's that level though, right? Where you keep coming back to it. I keep coming back into just the raw truth and into the craziness and the crazy experience of what primal is, of where the taboos have all the power. And then to be in that unabashedly, what happens is the desire to consume falls away.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
The swastha's within, the power is then within.
Yeah, in Tibetan Tantra, I've been really geeking out on the Tibetans lately, and they mention it's such a subtle refinement of like Vata, Pitta, Kapha and the levels of the mind, and they talk about we all have these different tendencies for how we go into these altered states of consciousness that are essentially non-truth and non-reality, but they feel really real in the moment. And there's like the God realm, the human realm, and the animal realm. And you and I were all in these God, the bliss of the yoga practice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're in the God realm, right? The attainment. I spent 20 years learning tantric attainment technology. Like this is the realm of the gods. And it's actually a very paltry realm compared to the full truth, right? But there's this one realm. There's two really. One's called the hell realm, and the other realm is called the realm of the hungry ghosts.
Mm.
And it's these ghosts that no matter how much they eat, their necks are really tiny. It can't get down into their belly. So like they're just stuffing their faces and more and more and more, and it never ever gets in them.
Yeah.
And when I see our world right now and the mental health crisis amongst young people and adults, we're really in the hell realms and the hungry ghost realms and the God realms. And that can sound really, the tantrics don't care about your feelings. They're like, no, we're going to call it the hell realm. We're going to call it the hungry ghost. Or like they scare the shit out of you, right? But it's just a state of consciousness. And the cool thing is that you can move out of that state of consciousness in 1/9 of a second.
Yeah.
It's complete delusion. And just by tasting one moment of presence, you can dissolve the whole fixation, the whole world, meaning the hungry ghost realm, the whole realm deconstructs. And then you can get back on Instagram, or you can go back to the shopping mall, or you can get back on, Tinder, or whatever crazy realm. And or you can just hang out with your family, and like, it can jump back into action. You're like, but what's cool is to be able to recognize this is the realm of the hungry ghost. Okay, this is the hell realm. Okay, this is the realm of the gods. And in this form of Tantra, and this is where things get really, people don't like to hear this, but this is what the teaching says is, you are not attempting to get out of them. You are beginning to see them and recognize when you're in them. And like, as a doer, I'm like, no, but tell me how to evolve. No, like tell me how to attain the non-realm. And it's like, that's the gig. You have to remain open to all the realms. And that, ironically, Kate, destroys all of the fear of AI or all the fear around the realms.
Or the fear of cow poop in your mouth.
Exactly. That's it. I'm not so afraid of fear anymore. I'm not so afraid of my own anger anymore. I'm not so afraid of my own death anymore. I mean that very literally. I'm in the charnel ground of my own practice right now. And then I am. And then I am afraid again. And like, you pulse in and out of these states, but there's someone who can witness all of it. And yeah, I think that's the deal. Like, and people, again, this doesn't sell books, and I think I will self-publish my next book, because to tell people the truth, we're not here to be comfortable.
Yeah. No. So much. Yes, to all. And the hungry ghost, that's dysbiosis. So, right, we're just, and everyone's got it because they're not feeding their microbes. So the more we go to like 100% microbiome recovery, all the cravings go away. There's just like reality interfacing. The body completely wants what it wants. That's good and nurturing. And there's no more room for fluff. And so it's interesting about eubiosis and dysbiosis and microbiome in the realm of the hungry ghosts and hell and healing crises. If we tie a couple things together here. Okay, so I'm just going to back up one step and say, when humans went to agriculture, we started using cows and oxen, and we started to use their cow dung to replace the missing parts of the microbiome from when we grazed wild. So That's why the cow, it's called cowpathy in Ayurveda. That's why the cow dung was used for everything. Cow dung is 1/3 cow urine. Cow urine has everything you'd ever need in your body. All the trace minerals are in there. So everything was already all packed into one. So the interesting thing about microbiome and diversity is it has the good guys and the bad guys. Like everyone has staph up their nose right now. It's how much are the good guys winning against the bad guys? The way that bad guys win is it's just exactly the same as multinational corporations or the consolidation of monopolies. Like Google's clearly a monopoly and everybody knows it, but no one's been able to shut it down, right? Amazon is clearly a monopoly, but no one's been able to shut it down. TikTok and blah, blah, blah is a monopoly, right? So if you just look at it that way, there's less diversity in corporations over time. Banks are consolidating, everyone's consolidating. That is dysbiosis in the body. So you have a few different types of microbes that are taking over most of the territory. And they're blocking oxygen absorption into epithelial cells. So if you look at cow dung, you've got the good guys, you've got the bad guys, you've got everybody, right? And that's the hungry ghost is when only the dysbiosis is ruling. And so you're constantly hungry because your microbiome is starving. The dysbiotic microbes are taking everything and controlling your senses, controlling your emotions, controlling your cravings, controlling what you put in. Hell, if we now go into hell, right, and death, right? So what did Jung say? He said, no roots can extend to heaven whose roots don't go to hell. So if we really look at the fire, so there's often this otherworldly, right, where we're willing to go out of the world of the living. That's what hell is, like Hades, Persephone, that myth. You guys know that myth, right? Where her mom is Demeter, queen of the harvest. Her daughter gets abducted, then later chooses to go back to the abductor, is actually in love with the abductor, which brings up all sorts of things against taboo and all sorts of like, how did that work? And that's across.
How common is this?
And how common is this? And it predates the Greek myths into the Sumerian myths, where Queen of Heaven goes down to the Queen of Hell to mourn her husband. And that Queen of Hell, so what predates in the Sumerian myth, Ereshkigal chose to go to hell. There was no abduction.
Yeah.
Right? So there's this willingness to go to hell that you just described. And then there's somewhat of an abduction. If those of you who have an autoimmune disease or have a diagnosis of cancer or another scary disease, it can feel like an abduction. Like, but I was doing everything right. Why me? And it feels like an abduction until there's a recognition of I'm choosing. I'm going to choose to say goodbye to the world, land of the living, and say hello to this completely other dimension that actually skyrockets me into a next verticality, right? Where now I can see through all the bullshit and I'm no longer affected by culture.
Yeah, I want to highlight that, Kate. Ereshkigal going down, you were mentioning. It's one of my favorite stories. And when she goes down, so in Tibetan Tantra, the hell realm is not classified as much by fire, although that's a part of it. You're going to love this. It's classified by a feeling of claustrophobia. I cannot get out. And it's uncomfortable. And like, I know even people listening, I start to say that word and you can feel the state starting to come about.
Oh, yeah.
And Ereshkigal, I'm getting chills, Kate, because first I want to bow before what you just now said. Aho. Being around someone who's in Sutika, the meaning the veil between life and death is thin for that person, is said to be like such a great honor because they are no longer in the wheel of samsara. They're no longer in the birthing and the deathing and this mundane human life, the false logic of samsara. And Ereshkigal, as she descends into the hell underworld to go to her sister.
Oh, and Anna's going to Ereshkigal.
And Anna's going to Ereshkigal, right? She disrobes something at each of the gates. And I love that idea because that's how it feels when you are willing to sit with fear or anger or claustrophobia. It feels like you're naked before something like Pema Chodron. There's fundamental groundlessness. And we're all so scared of that. And something like a cancer diagnosis or an autoimmune disease or divorce or job loss, like these things we've all gone through our own version of. I'm sure listeners out there, I know I have. They bring us into stark contact with the fundamental groundlessness of life. But here's the kicker. That's always happening. We are under the false delusion that we're creating some sort of enduring sense of egoic self, or enduring, I'm in my little house with my Bernedoodle and we're about to take an Epsom salts bath and watch Netflix. Like, it's really cozy over here, Kate. Like, this is reality. Like, hell no, motherfucker. Like, I mean, we've gone off on a tangent, but let me say this last piece around the thought. So listeners out there, we can give them some sort of hope. By letting the hell realm, the claustrophobia, the fear, whatever it is, by actually opening to it, breathing it in, and then in the Tibetan tantrics, you send out the opposite.
Yeah.
But you're giving it away.
Yeah.
You're saying, claustrophobia, come on in. Like, I'm going to suck you in. The worst taboo. I mean, when you say the word hell, Kate, I grew up Southern Baptist. That's like telling me to make contact with the most forbidden, horrid, wrathful thing in the world. You let that come in, and then you send out the opposite. That's how you actually transmute.
And that's exactly how urine therapy works, to answer that question. So the 7 gates of Anana going to Areshka Gel are the 7 dhatus.
Wow, you are blowing my mind. I love you.
So the way urine works is it's plasma.
Wait, tell people that don't know, the 7 dhatus are the 7 tissue layers of your physiology in Ayurveda.
Yeah. Yeah. So they're the physiology of our identity. Right. And so what's so cool, you guys, about detox and Ayurveda Panchakarma and Kaya Kalpa and all these things that we do, fast mimicking diet, we do all this stuff. And we both do this stuff in our communities, Shakti School and Club Thrive, is that it's an undoing. It's an undoing of the pattern. It's an undoing of the tissue. And people are so scared. Oh, the Vatas are scared they're going to lose weight. The Kaphas are scared of who they'll be without the whatever, mashed potatoes, the cookie, the whatever. That's right. There's this like who will I be without that? And that's those letting go, like a good deep detox done lovingly. And if we look at Inanna's descent from Queen of Heaven to visiting her sister Queen of Hell, it's such a good story. When she gets there, even though she has no bodily tissue left, her sister, who's mourning the death of her husband, picks up whatever's left of Inanna and impales her on the 3rd chakra to die.
And by the way, just to add, hangs her on a meat hook.
Meat hook on the 3rd chakra. She's hanging.
To make it a little more intense.
Right. And the reason was that Inanna still showed up with ego.
Yes.
The whiff of ego. And so that's why I went through 3rd chakra. She still had a connection to her identity as queen, where she had to dissolve into being no one and not knowing. So what happened, I just want to connect this with urine therapy and why it works. Because you were in urine for 9 months in utero. So that's why baby smells so good. It's why their skin is so precious, as they're bathing in urea and uric acid and every trace mineral in the human body, and all the electrolytes and all the probiotics for just months and months and months and months and months. So what happens when people go into that with urine therapy and they go into looping, the urine starts to taste like coconut water. They start to supplement based on how they want their urine to taste. So now they're using plant medicine, they're diversifying their diet, and they're going for complete saturation. Complete saturation is the same thing as the complete dissolution of those dhatus. And so in the emptiness, in the suffocation is the fullness, and that's the irony. That's always the paradox, is that heaven is actually found through the gate to hell, right? And in the body, that which is most taboo, right? Whether it's fasting for you, or whether it's the thing with the psychotropics, and I want to tie this together because I know some of you, I piqued your interest with the tripping. The psychedelic psychotropics suppress appetite and accelerate dissolution of the ego. So they were always used. They happen to grow in cow dung. So imagine this, you're picking the mushroom out of the cow dung, you eat it, you're already getting your microbiome replenished, you're getting your microbiome turned on, which is like Agni, for the GI tract. And it's just going to quickly turn over the species, much more quickly assimilate and kick out. And you're going to flush what's not longer needed. That flushing out what's no longer needed, that's Anana's descent. She's just like letting go layer of a past identity.
And guys, for those of you little tiny vanilla cookies like Katie, who is not a fan of psychedelics, for me in this lifetime, because I'm very, very, very sensitive, I don't think it's for everyone. So I just want to say,
Okay.
Do it. We've had amazing teachers on spirit sessions that always advise do it with wise guidance, but you can also do it, ready, with castor oil. For those of you that want a non-psychedelic option, there are several, but castor oil is no joke. Like, there is a reason why Edgar Cayce, who's from where I'm from, said that you either have castor oil consciousness or you don't. He related it to Christ consciousness. It goes into the tissues and cells and pulls out whatever is not needed.
Yeah.
Wild.
Yeah. DMSO too. So DMSO and castor oil together.
What's DMSO?
Dimethyl sulfate oxide, sulfuric oxide. It comes from the pine tree. It's sulfur. It's sulfur detox. There's a really good book, DMSO, on Amazon, and some of it is combined with castor oil. There's research in there that shows not to use castor oil with cancer. So I just want to put that little loop in there because a lot of people are unaware of that.
Good to know.
And I don't know why. I haven't had time yet to get into the research into the why. But I want to back up to the psychedelics, just to the realm of the taboo and back to microdosing, because how we were using them originally seems to be microdosing just as part of diet and then shamanic journeying. So unless we're doing it in one of those two ways, we're using it wrong.
That's really beautiful to hear.
And the microdose for someone who's Vata is going to be about 1/5 of the microdose for someone who's Kapha. It's going to be like the micro of the micro. But
it's almost like a homeopathic.
It's a homeopathic, exactly. And it's for the species, and it's for there's something, like if you read the studies on psilocybin, microbiome, and autism or dementia, it's so fascinating to see what it does with Agni.
So it's belly Agni or all the Agnis?
All the Agnis, and it's going to go where the most inflammation is. It's just going to go immediately to the inflammation.
I think for me, I'm just going to hold up a little vial of it and let it brush my cheek.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, you can even just put it on the altar. You don't even need to consume it. You can just let the consciousness.
I love it. All right. So obviously, everyone out there, you should buy Katie Silcox's new book, Glowworthy.
Glowworthy.
Into all the layers of the subtle. Everyone, run, don't walk. We're putting all the links in the show notes. Go get Uninflamed. Go get Primal Habits. Go get all Kate's books. I mean, you are literally like popping these babies out left and right. Because I know everyone listening is having the same question and thought, and I have to unfortunately end at 5 on the dot, Kate. And that is, how the heck do I do all of this? Okay, what are the methods? And so I just want you all to know Kate's book really does walk you through how to do this super practically, starting with urine, all of these things, just so people can have some, because I don't want to leave everybody like, oh my God, I'm in Anana's hell and I don't know how to deal with this. And similarly, all of the meditations for my book, Glowworthy, 100% free. They're online. You can sit with me and I'll walk you through these processes.
Oh, I'm going to go listen to your meditations. I'm really glad that they're out there. We can share them in Club Thrive. Embodied
Meditations. I say endogenous ecstasy, psychedelics. Yeah. You can also make your own, as we know. So here's a method.
Yes, exactly. And that's
what yoga was, right? Endogenous ecstasy practices.
Yeah. There's a ton in Primal Habits that's not on urine therapy, that is on microbiome diet. For those of you who just want microbiome diet, intermittent fasting for your body type, for Vata, Pitta, Kapha, that's all in there too. But back to urine therapy and inner ecstasy and, endogenous production of DMT, and the studies were crazy, Katie, on the snorting. So yogis, like anyone who's studied yoga or Ayurveda, know that like they're not afraid to use a hole. So the way you get to the brain is through the nose. And what happens, it goes from the nose to the parasinuses, into the olfactory bulb, straight into the cerebrospinal fluid, and then it bathes the pineal gland. It gets upcycled into the pituitary gland. So the studies on obesity were crazy. They're crazy. Like, people have a way smaller pineal gland and calcification over their pineal gland, so that their pineal gland literally shrinks. So you start snorting your own pee. Like, you don't need any fancy nauseas. Like, even just a few drops of fresh, and all of a sudden it just starts to open.
You can even just use your finger and just
sniff. And you're starting to decalcify, but then you're going to see a lot of the endogenous production of the inner ecstasy molecules.
We're all going to run and put all things on our body. This is so funny. Right before the recording of this podcast, Kate and everyone listening, my dog took a huge dump on my amethyst $1,500 heated amethyst biomat. And I was livid, right? And I was just like, oh no. And I'm like cleaning this off. And then I'm like, what 1,000 millions of chemicals can I throw on this to make this smell go away? I'm getting a new biomat. I'm not too proud to say that, but it literally smells like dog shit. But it's just so funny now, because I'm like, you know what would have worked better than, soap and water and rubbing alcohol and doggy pee elimination spray? Just water and a rag. It would have actually
urine. You're on urine. You're on urine and a rag.
Yeah, now it just smells like poop and all those chemicals.
Yeah. Just wash it with your own urine. So urine's like it's honestly the best cleanser, it's the best degreaser. One final note on my dog. So I'm now using, because I'm on this like 100% microbiome rejuvenation project, and I'm taking it incredibly seriously. And it's wild where it goes, because it goes so out of the box. So my new body oil is cow dung, coconut oil, and aged urine. When I rub that all over myself, my dog licks it off me, like, cannot get enough of it. And that's how in a way. And we start to get way less afraid of scat. And we start to use urine way more in cleansing, because like then you start to notice like it's probiotic, it's electrolyte. Now you're putting stuff in your environment that's healthy for your physiology. It seems so weird at first. And then after a while, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was using chemicals. That's so crazy. I was buying chemicals that were harming me.
Cate Stillman, you're so inspiring. Thank you for your rogue, wild willingness to be the guinea pig for all of us. I am really, really just want to shower you in all my gratitude. Thank you. I'm going to get there one day. I'm going to be covered in dog poop and cow dung and coconut oil.
Go with the cow, not the dog.
No dog. You're gonna see me.
Let your dog lick you up your nose, you guys. Everyone, let your dog lick you right up the nose, because they have microbes in their saliva that we can't get that increase serotonin.
Well, this is crazy. So I'm like, I love all things natural, obviously, but like I was not into my dog. Like, what? Kissing you? And now I'm like, I want her to kiss me so bad. I'm like, you are. Okay, so say hi, say bye-bye.
Go say hi, little Bernadoodle. Oh my gosh, my daughter she loves Bernadoodles. Get over here, big lump, big fluffy, oh, yummy, yummy. How old?
I'm actually, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm an Aussie Doodle. I'm Australian.
Are you an Aussie Doodle?
I'm Australian Mountain Doodle. I got Bernie's Mountain Mom and an Australian crazy Doodle Dad.
How old?
11 months.
Oh,
this is the love of my freaking life.
That's right. That's right. Oh, Bufo. Have you read My Dog is My Mirror?
No.
Just go right to the end. Just read the last chapter. You don't need all the fluff.
Okay.
So good.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, sister.
I hope our body paths cross again soon. I mean that with my whole heart.
Yeah, me too. Let's make it happen.
Figure it out. One day we are going to figure it out.
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, kisses.
You just got these, it's called L-Reuteri, Reuteri, and it's a microbe that is now only found, and like pet dogs have it. And then there's this like indigenous culture way the heck up in Peru, and they still have it, and it produces insane amounts of serotonin.
Wow, guys, the dog is literally licking my face, those of you that can't see. All right, everyone. Primal Habits, Glowworthy. Love you all, and more soon. Bye, Kate. A big special thanks to Kevin Carlisle of Goodbye Gemini, who wrote this beautiful podcast music, and to DJ Juan Pablo Jimenez in southern Spain for mixing it and making it magic.